Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the 21st SF Dog Fest. The festival is screening June 1st through 12th, both at the Roxy Theater in San Francisco as well as online. Today, we're joined with filmmakers from the What Remains program, which is going to be in person on Sunday, June 5th at 12 p.m. So hopefully you loved what you just watched so much that you come join us at the theater. Well, welcome. Thank you so much to our audience. Thank you so much to our filmmakers. And we'll just kick it off with having our filmmakers introduce themselves and tell us which film they're with. We'll start off with you, Jake. Hi.
What's up? My name is Jake Slaughter. My film is Our Very Own Emperor, which tells the story of our very own Emperor Joshua Abraham Norton. I was born and raised in San Francisco. I'm now currently studying architecture on the East Coast at Yale, but I'm excited to come back to the city.
Awesome. Welcome. Hi, Adrian. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, everybody. My name is Adrian Burrell. I'm from Oakland, California. I'm currently on tour with Pop-Up Magazine, and I just want to say thank you for watching my film, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you so much. Hi, Martin.
Yeah, my name is Martin Reid. I'm from Dublin, Ireland. I've lived in the Bay Area for 27 years, and I was frequenting a bar called Lucky 13 in those 20 years of the 27, and for years I had been going to, for a long time, there was threats of it closing down. Eventually it did close down, so I documented it and I did a movie on it, and yeah, and thank you for watching it.
Awesome, thank you. And hi, Ginger. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm Ginger Yifan Chen. I'm a writer and director in San Francisco. I'm a longtime resident of the Bay Area. I also work in nonprofits, especially nonprofits focused on diversity in film, such as CAM or BayCat.
Well, those orgs. And I miss them very much. So glad to hear that you're working with them also. So let's just kind of talk about the genesis of your films. How did they come to be? How did you find the subject material? And we're going to go back in reverse. And Ginger, we'll start off with you. Tell us about your film.
Yeah, my film, What Remains, was actually quite an accident. I had been sort of dragged along on this camping trip, and I had packed my camera and some sound gear in the hopes that I'd shoot some, I don't know, nature photography, get some sounds. And in that process, I was in San Rafael and I stumbled upon this preserved shrimping village, which is in China Camp State Park. And I started talking to the people who were working there. And I only had 8 gigabytes of data. I only had a tiny little card that I thought was just going to be for photography. So instead of recording video, I recorded audio and took photographs. And that was how the format of the film came to be. It was very much something that I stumbled upon and just had to make.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Martin, I mean, obviously, longtime fans, as I'm sure a lot of our audience who are checking this out, longtime fans of the bar. So sad that it has closed, but can you kind of talk a little bit more about why you decided to document this process? And I think that your film also does something interesting where it talks about more than just the bar. It talks about the ecosystem of San Francisco and what was kind of forces.
I mean, essentially it is a bar. We lost 1 million people through COVID. Like, I mean, there's a bigger picture with a neoliberal model that we've been predisposed to since the Reagan era, where government is serving big business as opposed to community. And I think real estate is driving the narrative as opposed to neighborhoods. We have a bar like any other bar that has a community in it that all of a sudden was sold. And essentially that building is still idle on Market Street as we speak. And that is like nearly 2 years later. And I think it's criminal, and not just bars or wherever businesses, like housing. I mean, who controls the housing stock? Who controls the food banks and the healthcare? And I think especially during COVID, it did expose the inequalities and disparities in our society. And I think the bar is part of that narrative. Like, we are not controlling the housing stock and the building stock in our neighborhood. And yeah, once again, it's just a bar. But our bar and our community is all over the place right now. And like, we're going around like headless chickens. We're in the Haight Street, we're in Castro, we're in the Mission. And I just think it's so sad, considering the amount of like people that worked there and had jobs and had kids and mortgages and rents, like, and then walking by a building that is empty that could be put to work. So I came from that point of view with the gentrification angle, just to shape a narrative from a left-wing perspective and use the bar as a model to demonstrate that. But there's also, I mean, basically, the bar, the film is like, I mean, I had a camera, I pressed the record button, and people spoke, and I built a story around that, and I threw the gentrification in on top, and we had a 27-minute movie, so.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Jake, let's talk about Emperor Norton. Obviously, maybe for audiences outside of the Bay Area, a new figure, but I definitely think that the legend looms large for those in San Francisco about who Jake Norton was. But can you talk about how you found this story and decided to explore it?
Yeah, so it actually started as a research project essay for some class. And the more I looked, the more I was surprised that there wasn't some sort of short film or documentary or even like a longer recent work about the emperor. There's various organizations honored to honor his memory. And the more I look and the more you look at this guy, the more you see these really fun stories, whether they be true or not. Many of them are just urban legend. But I think he's a really, I think it's what our city can be when it's at its best, is the kind of person who will support somebody like that, the kind of place that will support somebody like that. And so I think it was just a really fun thing to make and a really fun person to explore, and working with Joseph and John was also great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And then Adrian, I mean, I don't even know where to begin with your film. It is a lyrical, expressionistic look at the lives of folks in the Bay Area that almost takes on like a Daughters of the Dusk-esque approach to the narrative form within the documentary form. Can you kind of talk about the genesis of your film and how you brought it together?
Yeah, so I grew up in Oakland, California. My family's been there since 1927. And a lot of the things I experienced growing up, either metaphorically or literally made it into the film. And through community members' lives, through family members' lives, through friends' lives, everyone who's in the film is either one of those people. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question?
Yeah, how did you conceive the film, and how did you kind of bring your subjects together?
I was in the MFA program at Stanford last year, and we had to make a final thesis project. And so I was thinking of all these things that I wanted to talk about, like all these questions that were just running through my head about like moral compass and black market economies and capitalism and logistics and the origins of those things, specifically surrounding logistics. And I was like, I want it all to live in one vessel. I want it all to be in one thing. And I wanted to kind of like fight and move around and come up with these different realities and questions and things. And so that's what I decided to do. And it was kind of at first, I'm like, how do I talk about all this, right? And that's when I started to really get into just like using metaphor and how to incorporate myth through having this protagonist character, Dr. Ayodele Nzinga, who's the first poet laureate of Oakland, and also access the goddess of the crossroads within the Game Gods.
Thank you so much. Just I feel like your film is a really lyrical bookend to the themes that are explored throughout the program, that really are kind of the violence of gentrification, the violence of capitalism, through the lens of the Oakland narratives. I just find it to be very special. Um,
Thank
so let's talk about challenges. Obviously, filmmaking is hard. Filmmaking around these times is even more difficult as it is a collaborative art form. And getting people to allow you to tell their stories is something that takes a lot of trust and communication. So Adrian, we'll kick it back to you. Can you talk about how you found your subjects and kind of got them to be on board to tell their stories?
Well, one thing is that I never wanted to say anything that would put anybody in danger or do anything that would put anybody in a bad situation. So I tried my best and talked to lawyers and talked to community members and talked to the people I collaborated with to make sure that I wasn't putting anybody in harm's way with anything that I was doing. And even in the film, like you can see, like we blurred a lot of people's faces and like covered their voices up, things like that. And then I would say, other than that, these are people I have long-term relationships with, whether I grew up with them, whether they're a family member, or whether somebody in the community vouched for me and introduced me to them. So it really just kind of came together holistically. I told them what I was trying to do and everybody was on board with it. And I think also through the use of myth and through the use of metaphor, it also puts a kind of like mask on the film to where like when you know certain things, you know, like certain people will watch the film and they'll get nuances that other people won't pick up on. But if those other people could pick up on those things, I would be wrong. So yeah, I guess I tried to make it a little cryptic as well in certain ways.
And that touches upon like just the ethics of documentary making and making sure that everyone is safe and portrayed in a light that is accurate and appropriate. Ginger, I think you also are accessing like a personal narrative, personal like family histories. How did you connect with your subjects and kind of get them on board for this?
Yeah, I wish I had a more dramatic story, but I will say that they were quite eager to share their story. I think that comes with the nature of going onto a site of historical preservation. They want to share the story and they want more people to know it. It was quite intimate, knowing this family's history. If you see the film, there's documentation of their immigration process and issues of back then interracial marriage, which was very hard for their family member to get through. And and the house of a major player in preserving that place, Frank Kwan, he recently passed away, and they showed me his preserved home, which was really quite special and intimate because everything was the way it was, all the decorations, everything in the kitchen as if he had just finished cooking. I'd say that I'm really proud that they are doing the work to make his story and the story of that family still live on.
Thank you so much. Jake, I mean, yours is an interesting narrative. You have a public figure who has had reenactors kind of retelling his story for so long. What do you think Emperor Norton has to say about the current state of the Bay Area and even our national politics, right? Like, what if Norton had seceded and we had our own
Oh, sorry, you're cutting out. Oh, there you are.
Sorry.
1 second. Okay, yeah, there you go. I think this was actually, you're getting at of the main challenge of the film, which was really unraveling 150 years of history and different opinions, and different narratives about the emperor that maybe he wouldn't necessarily have agreed with, that weren't necessarily true. So I think I don't think he would be necessarily surprised with where we're at as a country and where we're at as a city and Bay Area and larger California community. I think that he probably I mean, just looking at a lot of the stuff that was happening around the 1860s and 1880s, there's still the same issues of violence against immigrants, and the city being saying that it's an accepting place when it's really not. And so I think that the emperor would maybe be a little bit proud of some progress that we made, but at the same time, not surprised. And I don't think that things would have been honestly that different had we seceded the way the emperor maybe wanted to. I think that maybe abolishing Congress, like he so many times did, may have made a difference. But at the same time, I don't know that a single monarch would help our society at all.
Agreed. Thank you so much. And Martin, can you kind of talk about your hopes for the way that your film talks about community, and maybe what is happening within your community with the loss of the bar?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question, like considering what we went through this week with the mass shootings, and I don't want to take it away from it, but I think there's a connection and cause and effect, and I think the drive, especially through COVID, like with this sense of individualism as opposed to the concept of community, like was exposed to America big time, and like community values in the United States, I feel is probably the worst in the world. And like, yeah, as we saw, like individuals were driving the narrative through COVID, and like community is put on the back burner. And that's what happens like in these cities where they make business decisions and not moral ones. And once again, it's just a bar. Absolutely. And I'm well aware of that. But community is everything in neighborhoods. And I think we should pay attention to that. And I think that is a big flaw in American culture right now. I mean, there's a saying that, like, Karl Marx said once, like, that religion is the opiate of the masses. I believe the American dream is the opiate of the masses, because the individual is more important than the community. And to go back to COVID, 1 million people died, and I think that was responsible for that, a lot of that. But community is paramount, absolutely, and I mean, nobody exists without coexisting without other people. We don't live in an island. We live with each other. We get on the bus driver, we pay, we go to a bar, a restaurant. There's people working in the community, the service, like, and we should pay attention to that.
Thank you so much. And I think that is a very powerful thing, I think, as we wrap up our Q&A, to think about that when we see cycles of gentrification, when we see cycles of redlining neighborhoods, we see a very violent act, which is breaking up communities, which at the end of the day makes us weaker as a city,
and it disproportionately affects people of color, black and brown, and poor white people, of course. But essentially, by and large, black and brown people suffer.
Yes, I mean, we've seen that cycle with the Fillmore in San Francisco, with Hunter's Point. We've seen it throughout Oakland. I'm a Sacramento native. We see this in Sacramento as well, and there's a trickle down. When you break up communities, you give people less power to advocate for themselves. But thank you all so much for sharing your films. It's a really lovely program, and I'm so excited to get to present it in person. All right, thank you to our audience.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.